St. Francis Xavier's massive apostolic labors transformed entire geographical regions in the 16th century, a time when traveling across the world took months or sometimes even years as compared to a few hours, thanks to the scientific progress in our days. Were he alive today, can't you just imagine how St. Francis Xavier would have put our technological advances, such as speed of communication and transportation, at the service of the gospel, bringing the faith to entire countries and continents? Salve Maria! After accompanying St. Francis Xavier for 9 days through his life in various countries in the East and the West, on land and on sea, through tempest and tranquility, we have reached his feast day. Let us imagine St. Francis Xavier alive today. What would he have to say to each of you and to me? Well, after 9 days in his company, I am sure he considers us his friends, and by his intercession, we are not far from him at all. There are no barriers between the holy souls in the glorious church triumphant in heaven and the members of the church militant here, still fighting below. So let us take the liberty to delve once again into his letters from the past to see what he would like to tell us on his feast day during this novena in 2022. In one letter, he cautioned the religious of the Society of Jesus not to place their trust in people who often let us down, but in God, who is unshakable. He wrote, "The instability of men will make you look more to God, despise yourself more, and cling to God, who is ever present to us." Those who have had the experience of being let down by friends or family know how true this is. Yes, let us cling to God with all our might. May St. Francis Xavier remind us of this important maxim frequently. In another letter, he showed his prudence with choosing missionaries for a successful harvest of souls. He insisted on men adorned with all other virtues, but especially with humility, meekness, patience, and above all, the virtue of purity. They must be men of such approved goodness as to be able to go either with companions or without companions, wherever the interests of religion may call. All of us have the responsibility of bearing the light of the gospel to others, and therefore, all of us, men, women, the young, the old, have at least a small role to play as missionaries. It could be as simple as the example of our upright conduct at school, at our workplace, or with family, friends, relatives. Here we can ask St. Francis Xavier to infuse into our hearts the virtues that will make us effective evangelizers in every circumstance. In his letters to his brothers in the Society of Jesus, he insisted on the virtue of humility more than any other virtue. Would St. Francis Xavier also encourage us in the 21st century to practice humility? Let's admit it. In today's egoistic and hectic world, humility is a virtue that is little understood. But no, being humble does not mean hiding your light under a bushel or any such thing. It has to do with a right relationship with God, as our saint explains. It is right that those who have a desire to serve God should lower themselves and empty themselves as much as possible, so that they may have an utter distrust of themselves and an immense trust in God. And thus they may become accustomed, when great dangers of life or death, or when great trials present themselves, to have a great hope in the goodness and the mercy of God. So it is by being little that we are great. St. Francis Xavier was great because of his humility. He was great because he let God act in him and through him in every situation. We are also called to this form of greatness. If he had a fiery zeal for the lost souls, he also had an equal or a greater zeal for the souls of his brothers in vocation, because on many occasions he urged them to make an examination of conscience at least once a day, if not twice, so that they wouldn't fall into the traps of the evil one. I am sure that he would be pleased with us if we also adopted this pious practice. There is yet another lesson for us. this time from the letters exchanged between Saint Francis Xavier and the father of his soul, Saint Ignatius of Loyola. Did you know that the last letter exchanged between them was written by Saint Ignatius, in which he ordered Saint Francis Xavier, through holy obedience, to return to Portugal immediately? But Saint Francis Xavier died before this letter reached him. He had his sights set on conquering China for Christ when he died, in the prime of his life. But we can well imagine how he would have reacted if he had really received this letter. He would have lost no time in following the command of his beloved father Ignatius. He would have joyfully sacrificed his dream of evangelizing China, knowing that by obeying, he was fulfilling God's plan in the best way possible. How important in our lives to seek God's will first, above and beyond any personal plans or dreams. In a previous letter, St. Ignatius had mentioned his desire to see St. Francis Xavier again, to which St. Francis Xavier replied that the mere affection of these words brought tears to his eyes and consolation to his heart. So we can imagine what pain St. Ignatius must have felt when he heard the news of the death of his most faithful disciple. But those united on earth by zeal and holy charity cannot be separated in eternal glory. They would embrace once again in heaven. They were even canonized on the same day, the 12th of March, 1622. Aren't these counsels super useful to us in our days, so filled with chaos and uncertainty where godlessness reigns? On the feast of the Apostle of the East, let us ask God, through the intercession of the Queen of the Apostles, to revive in our hearts the virtues of Saint Francis Xavier, so that we may bear the hope of the gospel of Jesus Christ by our words and example, always recognizing our shortcomings and therefore depending entirely on heavenly aid. May Saint Francis Xavier bless each of you today and lead you to the heights of sanctity God desires for you. Salve Maria!
If you like this video, press the like button and leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you won't miss any of our videos.